This is Technically Legal, a podcast about legal technology, innovation in the legal industry, and the impact tech is having on the law. I'm Chad Main, the founder of legal services company Percipient, and on today's show, I'm having a conversation with Sophia Contreras Schwartz. She's General Counsel at Nextdoor. When today's guest, Sophia Contreras Schwartz, General Counsel at tech company Nextdoor, was in middle school, her band conductor handed her an oboe. It's an instrument that requires focus, muscle memory, and a specific kind of physical grip. But as we'll hear, for Sophia, the oboe, and for that matter, life in general, isn't about the solo. It's about the symphony, the collaborative sound. After college and law school, Sophia found herself in a different kind of ensemble, a mid-sized law firm, where she eventually remained partner. And by all accounts, she'd made it. But she still found herself asking, is this really it? What she realized when she asked herself if this was it is that she missed the vibe of the orchestra. She figured this out because outside the law firm, she was a bar and cycling instructor, which helped her figure out that she missed the interaction that law firm life just wasn't providing. So what did she do? She left the law firm to become the second legal hire at a growing tech company, Nextdoor. When she joined the company, there were no manuals, no established legal department, and at the time, an intern was still signing contracts. Today on the show, we're going to learn how Sophia built her legal symphony. We'll talk about why she thinks legal ops is a secret weapon for a lean team. She's going to tell us how she uses AI as a force multiplier to stay ahead of middle tech regulations, and why she believes the best lawyers are the ones who think like operators, not just issue spotters. I think you might be a first for the podcast. I saw that you are on the board of Chamber Music America. Are you a chamber musician yourself?
I was. I wish I still was. I started playing piano when I was 5. I studied privately, all the way through high school. And when I was in 6th grade, I started playing the clarinet in my middle school band. And my band conductor was impressed by my abilities and just said, hey, I'm going to buy an oboe for the school. I'd like you to play it. So I started playing the oboe in middle school and then moved on to high school. I went to a high school in Northern California that had an amazing music program. And, I did a lot of performing with school, kept up my private studies with piano, did competitions. I trained people. I like to coach. It was amazing. I'd really like to get back to that part of my life eventually when I'm, older and have more time. And it's a little difficult with a full-time job and younger children. But a friend of mine who I went to high school with, who's the CEO of Chamber Music America, he's also an extremely accomplished concert pianist and chamber musician himself. He reached out to me a couple years ago and asked me to join the board. So it's been an interesting journey. It's a nice way for me to stay in touch with, that part of my life, which is something I can't put a lot of time into. And also, do something that's helping a lot of people and helping people do something that I got so much value out of when I was growing up. Actually, last night I went to the Nutcracker in San Francisco. And so it's always fun to see the orchestra in the pit and then hear the oboe tuning the orchestra and telling my kids, that was me.
Was oboe your favorite?
Piano is my first love. Oboe as a group, for me, is not something I like to do alone. It's a community thing. And I really loved doing that. I love playing with other people. When I went to college, I went to UC Berkeley, I got into the symphony as an oboist there. I was sitting behind, I think, like 4 graduate students. And the conductor, I didn't really like his vibe. So I never really pursued that, but I kept up my private studies. And then I did a minor in music when I was at college there. But I think, eventually I'd like to play in a community orchestra. There are some in the place that I live. And I'd have to get back into playing, though. It requires a lot of muscle memory in your cheeks. It's the opposite because it's a double reed. So it's intense. You can't just like pick it up and start again. But one of these days.
You get back on. That's great. Is anything from your background in music that you think is applicable to law? Is there anything that you maybe have a different angle than a non-musician lawyer?
That's a really interesting question. I haven't really thought about that. I mean, I think there are things about me that are different in general. I'm left-handed. I tend to think about things differently. I joke about this with my husband all the time. Like, we'll be doing a math problem with a kid, and I will approach it in a very different way than he does. And I attribute that to, apparently I use a different side of my brain. But I also think that, they say left-handedness and creativity go hand in hand. So probably that impacts my drive to music. But in terms of how it translates to legal, I would say I'm not a very nerdy lawyer. I'm not someone who's going to study the ins and outs of like one nuanced issue and be really interested in that. I like all of it. And I really like that collaborative effort and, being part of a legal team and being part of a company. And that allows me to talk to different people and not just be, around lawyers all day. And I don't know, maybe that's partly attributed to playing a musical instrument in a group and creating something together with other people.
Yeah, that is interesting because a lot of times what you hear about law firms, they're siloed, right? Speaking of law firms, getting ready for today, of course, I looked at your background. You pretty much worked at one law firm your entire career until you went to Nextdoor. How and why did you make the jump?
So I started at my law firm as a summer associate, did the standard OCI thing at law school. I went to UC Hastings, not called that anymore, and I can never remember the name, UC Law College of San Francisco, something like that. I should study up on the current name of my law school. That's important. So I did OCI. I went to my firm. I liked my firm. It was a mid-sized firm. I was able to do many different things. I wasn't exactly sure what type of law I wanted to practice. And that being in a mid-sized law firm allowed me to explore and not get siloed into, litigation or into corporate or into, one kind of transaction. And I worked my way up from, summer associate to eventually partner. And when I became partner about 9 years in, I basically was asking myself all the time, is this it? Is this my life? And like, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And I very easily could have stayed there and it would have been fine. It would have been a great life. And, I'm still very close with people at my firm. And I know that if I ever wanted to go back, they'd be like, come on, come back and join us. But the other thing about me is I also moonlit as an exercise instructor for about 10 years. I worked at it was called the Daily Method at the time. I taught bar, I taught interval, I taught cycling. And I had this epiphany when I went in-house. I realized that the reason I had taught for so long while working at a law firm was because I needed that interaction with people that I didn't really get in my law firm on a day-to-day basis, because as we were saying earlier, I was sitting in my office with the door closed, writing contracts or briefs and emails and not really having that interaction with people or being up in front of people. And when I went in-house, I realized I was doing all of that all day long and I didn't need to teach anymore. So going in-house, I was always interested in it, but I didn't want to go into a role at a large company that I would, where I would just be a cog in the machine. I have a lot of different interests and I want to do a lot of different things and, have my hand in.
To that point, you were the second hire, I think, right? At Nextdoor?
I was second hire, and when I came to Nextdoor, we had never had a legal team. The company was 7, 8 years old at that point, and there had been no in-house legal presence. My boss, my predecessor as GC, was the first lawyer at the company. He hired me very quickly after he started, and we built the legal team, the legal organization up from there. And that was something I was really excited about. I think that translates to my skill set very well. And the other thing about Nextdoor that I really liked was that it's tangible. So I didn't necessarily want to go to a company that was, making some like little piece of software that goes into something else. I wanted to work on something that I could relate to. And I think, Nextdoor is real. Everyone has a neighborhood, everyone's part of a community.
Explain to those that might not be familiar with the site what it is. What is Nextdoor?
Well, Nextdoor is the essential neighborhood network. So you can join in your neighborhood and instantly have a network of people around you that are part of your local area. It's a place where people go to get help. So if you're looking for a plumber, you're looking for a local restaurant or a coffee shop, or you need help doing something, it's a place where you can go and reach out and ask your neighbors for recommendations and then give and get help in the same way. It's very different than other social networks, which are really more just about connections. Nextdoor is really focused on, what's around you. If it's happening in your neighborhood, it should be on Nextdoor.
How big is the legal team now?
My legal team is about 8 total. Our company is around 500 employees, so we have not grown as a legal team in the past couple years, which is fine. We operate as a very lean group, but that works for us. And there's been advancements in technology that have made it a lot
Yeah.
more helpful and easier for us to be operating in that way.
So going back to, you said you were the second hire.
Yeah.
The company had been around 7, 8 years and didn't really have a legal function. Knowing that now, if you were talking to a founder or a burgeoning company, at what point do you think a company should hire their first attorney, hire their first GC?
So we were about 240 employees, and we just started generating revenue the year before we brought in a legal team. So I think there's a couple aspects. I mean, I think once you start making money and you're entering into contracts with people on a larger scale, you really want someone there making sure you're crossing T's and dotting I's. But also if you're in a highly regulated space, which Nextdoor, I wouldn't say we're highly regulated. Obviously, there's a complex framework of laws that do impact us, but it's not like we're a healthcare company or something like that. So I would say if you're starting to generate revenue, you're increasing volume there, you're entering into agreements, you need to hire a lawyer. Even if that's not what you're doing, if you're in a highly regulated space, like that's when you bring in a lawyer as well. But I think we came in, around the right time. I always joked with with my former boss that, I think the company was ready for mom and dad. They kind of wanted that, like, someone they could go to ask questions of. I mean, I think at the time I joined, probably an intern was signing contracts at the company, which, is fine for the stage that we were at was fine. But obviously, if you're looking to scale, if you're looking to take it to the next level, you need to button up a little bit. And it was really interesting. I mean, we were really starting all of our foundational teams around the end of 2018, so kind of people, finance, and legal, and really building up that operational muscle to take the company to the next level.
Hey everyone, Vicky from Percipient here. I just wanted to give you a heads up about a new service Percipient is rolling out in 2026, subpoena compliance services. If your company gets a bunch of subpoenas or data requests, Percipient can help. Literally the whole process. You just forward the request to us and Percipient takes it from there. We'll check if it's actually valid, flag any issues, and let you know about any objections. Then Percipient works with your team to gather and prep the data. You'll see everything in Percipient's secure portal. Status, due dates, metrics, all of it. So you'll never be out of the loop. And my favorite part? If you're allowed to charge the requesting party for costs, Percipient software collects that money for you before we hand over the documents. Basically, Percipient handles legwork so your team can focus on the core work. If you want to chat about it, head to percipient.co or shoot us an email at subpoenas@percipient.co.
You said that you're not in a highly regulated industry, but you are subject to a decent amount of regulation. Is there any unique legal challenges that Nextdoor faces because of the nature of the company that it is that a healthcare attorney wouldn't face?
I think the unique challenge for us is that a lot of these new regulations are really geared towards big tech and social networks that are not next door. So we get grouped in with the Facebooks and the Snapchats and the TikToks of the world, but that's not what we are as a platform. We're not about viral content, doom scrolling, that sort of thing. We're a utility platform for neighbors. And I think that distinction really matters and how laws and regulations are applied. For a company like us, which we're actually part of a trade association called Internet Works, which has dubbed the term middle tech. It's really important for us that regulation is tailored and that we kind of get away from this one size fits all concept.
What's an example of a regulation that obviously Facebook should face that maybe is a little harder for you guys to handle or deal with?
There's been a lot of stuff around age verification in the United States. Multiple states, mostly in the South, have promulgated these laws and regulations around verifying age of users on a platform, which, I look, I'm a parent. I have my own issues with social media. I don't want my 9-year-olds on YouTube, 24/7. I don't think it's good for her. So I like the idea of verification and, parental controls and all of that, but that's not next door. There's a lot of opportunity, I think, for minors on the platform to be helpful in their communities and, play an active role in their neighborhoods.
I love the groups. I saw there was a local babysitting group.
Yeah, or, there's the like maybe someone wants to go help elderly neighbors pick up their mail or take out their garbage cans or something like that. I mean, Nextdoor is a really great place where someone could make that connection with a neighbor and be able to, give back to their community and participate in that kind of way. That is not them sitting on their phones scrolling through video after video after a video being influenced in a negative way. So there's been a lot of legal challenges for age verification laws. A lot of them have played out, but there have been a couple places where we actually have had to make changes to our member agreement and no longer allow individuals under 18 on the platform, Texas being one of those states. And even though there's a mechanism in a lot of those laws to allow under underage people on the platforms, it creates too much operational burden for a company of our size to do in this moment. And maybe, eventually we'll get there and be able to spend the engineering time and resources on building out these controls. But right now, that's not a priority for us. So we have to then just say, okay, fine, you can't come on. And I don't think that's great in the long term for a platform like Nextdoor, which has a real opportunity for everyone who's in a neighborhood to be an active participant.
Yeah. So you small legal team, you mentioned tech. What kind of tech does the legal department use on a daily basis to help get that work done?
We have a great legal stack right now. I mean, obviously, we'd love more budget to get more of it, but we're focused on force multipliers. So we really want tools that are going to free up our time so we can focus on work that requires judgment and strategy and all of that. And then the other aspect is tools that can keep us organized so we can track everything that comes our way. The very first thing we put into place was a contract lifecycle management tool. We use Ironclad. It's actually fantastic because we've been using it as a mini procurement system. We put it in 2019, so it's
It's been a while. Yeah.
years.
Yeah.
We were one of the earlier adopters of it, but it's tech that benefits not just the legal organization, but also other functions like finance, security, IT. And I also will say that our tech is only as good as our legal ops manager. So legal ops was a very early hire for us at Nextdoor.
Now that's interesting because that usually comes later at bigger companies, right?
It does, but I really, I'm having been here now for a long time and built the team from the ground up. I feel like we would not have the advancements in tech that we have now and be as efficient as we are and as collaborative and helpful to other cross-functional groups as we are if we did not have legal operations. If I had brought an Ironclad by myself, it would have just been like a repository system, not an intake system with built-out approvals and all of that. So that's a major role for us and something that, I will continue to hold on to like as long as I'm here at the company. So that's really our biggest piece of tech is Ironclad. We also use Simple Legal for billing.
A great program. Love that.
It's a great program. It's nice for me to have a good picture of what our budget is. And, I have a very close relationship with finance. They love legal because we're very organized and we keep them up to date on all developments. And they're like, we don't ever get surprised by you. Like, that's amazing coming from finance because there's often legal budgetary surprises. So if we're keeping you informed, I think we're doing our job. We use other enterprise tools that are available to the whole company, Slack, Jira, Gemini, Notebook LM, Glean. And then, we bought GCAI earlier this year,
Great.
which has been fantastic. I call it a force multiplier. We use it for all sorts of things from drafting, summarizing, translating legal speak to business speak, et cetera, and redlining in Word as well. So it's amazing.
This is kind of an arcane nerd question for you, but I'm always curious about this is how you mentioned Slack and Jira. How are legal requests made from business to the legal department?
Another plug for legal ops. So when we got legal ops in, I asked our manager to build out an intake tool in Jira because, it was very difficult. We would be getting a Slack, an email, someone back when people used to be in the office every day, walking up to you and asking you to do something. And it was really hard to keep track of things. And as our team got bigger, we needed to be able to assign work across the group. So we created a ticketing system in Jira. That is where we bring in all requests that are not contract. So contracts go straight through Ironclad, but all other requests go through go/legal tickets is our shorthand link for it. And then we have it kind of categorized. People can come in and say, I have a question about product or PR or comms or whatever. And then it gets routed to the right person.
That's cool. Yeah, because some of our customers use Jira just like that. But the other cool thing about it too is you can set up those workflows, right? So it's got to go to finance at some point, then they get alerted at the right time. So that's cool.
I mean, I don't love it. I think the
really?
UX is clunky and there are other tools out there. I mean, we are looking at other intake tools. I really want to be able to quantify, the amount of work that comes into the team. And it's easy to do on the contract side because that's in Ironclad. We can see the number, we can categorize it out by type of contract. But all those other things, I mean, the Slack questions and the Jira questions, like trying to aggregate all the numbers and like figure out, exactly how much work legal is doing is difficult. But that's also how we can justify budgetary spends. It's like we're a cost center, so we really have to when we want to bring on an extra headcount, we really have to show the business, show finance that like, look, here's the amount of work that we're doing and where we think, an additional resource would help alleviate pressure and make us faster and more efficient, all of that.
These tools that you've talked about in legal ops has mentioned, suggested a couple. Does legal ops come up with these ideas and pitch them to you, or is it a combination of both?
It's a combination. So, legal ops is part of industry groups like Clock, and they go out and they hear. I have one person on the team, so it's not a they, it's a he right now, not a group, but he's out there in the industry, ear to the ground, looking at things, and he'll bring ideas to me or to other people on the team. We'll talk about them as a group, but then we'll be out at different conferences or events in the industry and hear about something that someone else is using, and then we can go to legal ops and say, hey, can you check this out? It looks interesting. And then, he'll go out and source different versions of that same thing so that we can take a look. Like when we were choosing GCAI, we looked at, I think, 3 different tools. We did proofs of concept with 3 different things. We had hands on the keyboard, got to use them, and then make that decision of what was best for our team before we bought it.
And just because, we just had Cecilia on the podcast. So what about GCAI did you like that won you over?
So ease of use. I mean, it's like ChatGPT, so it's a chat-based tool. I like that you can share out different chats. So like if we have a specific legal issue that we're working on, you can share, your chat with other people on the team and you can collaborate and all of that. I liked the library system where you can upload documents and, keep them in your library and reference them. I just think that, you can test it across different things and like the answers that it comes up with are better. I mean, one thing that always struck me, I mean, we don't have an enterprise ChatGPT license. We do use the Playground, which is, the API, more developer side of it, in other parts of business. But I tested GCAI against other AI tools. Like I'd ask it a question and get the answers. And GCAI would always come up with the nuance and the context that was necessary for lawyers. Like the one big example that I had was we were looking at some employment law in a particular state because of a specific issue at the company. And I went into ChatGPT and I said, hey, what are the laws in this state about this particular topic? And ChatGPT comes back and says, oh, there's no state laws around that topic in that area. Okay. GCAI goes, there's no statewide law, but there are city-specific ordinances. And one of the cities is, this city, which happened to be the city that was relevant for the question that we were looking at. And that was like the clincher for me of, oh, like it's worth it because the devil is in the details when you're a lawyer. And like that's the type of nuance that you need in an answer.
It was the same prompt. You used the same prompt about both. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Totally
GCAI kept going. Oh, that's interesting. That's cool. That's really cool. We've been talking these tech tools quite a bit. You've already mentioned that tech helps you keep the legal team lean and mean. What does it take to scale a legal team? Like, what have there been growing pains? Like, what do you? If someone was asking you how to do it, what would you tell them?
I wish there were growing pains. We haven't, had much new headcount for the last couple of years. So I don't really think scaling is just about headcount. I really think it's about being smarter, being more strategic, and being really integrated with the business. I think you have to be really honest about what you need. Like what problem are you trying to solve and what's the best way for us to solve that? And what's the best way for us to solve that that's going to also solve a bunch of other different things, right? What's the hire that is the force multiplier across the team? So I think there's a few things that you really, want to look for. We already talked about legal ops. I really think that like scaling requires an investment in that part of the organization. It's really critical for organizing around a lean team. It helps drive, process design. It helps you manage your vendors and your budget, implementing all of your tech so that your lawyers can focus on doing legal work and not on hooking up a system and working with the IT team. Our tools are only as good as our legal ops manager, and that's key for scaling. And the other thing is just hiring the right people. So we're looking for lawyers who think like operators, who are not just issue spotters. You want someone who has business acumen. And really, I think this is key, being able to pivot across different topics. So when you're on a leaner team and you don't have the headcount, you really want people who are interested in many different things. You're kind of like lifelong learners, have a curiosity, and are comfortable like operating out of their normal zone. So I will give you an example. I have my senior product counsel runs product, litigation, IP and policy, because that is just where we are as a team. But, she's someone who has a litigation background, and she's someone who's been working with product teams for a long time. And so maybe it seems weird to couple products and litigation together, but the litigation that, her group deals with is litigation that stems from use of the product. And so having that knowledge of the product and, relationships across the business helps her manage that kind of user-based litigation in a more efficient way. So we want people who can pivot across different topics and, flex between functions, and then also just thrive in ambiguity. There's not like a manual for your day job at Nextdoor. You're going to get dropped into different things at different times. And that's not for everybody, and you really have to be careful when you're hiring for a new person to join your team, that you're interviewing for that trait. You have to know what is it that your team needs in this moment. And for our team, that's, versatility and curiosity. Those are just two non-negotiables. Lastly, I would say, you really have to be a good partner with the business. People who join our team always ask me what they should focus on first. And I always say, get to know your people. We want people on the legal team embedded very early in the business and being a strategic partner to them, kind of starting with that, what's the business objective? What are we trying to achieve? Okay. And then figuring out how we can help do that. And that is also something that can be a little bit difficult to coach with people. Some people want to come in as a lawyer and just give the rules and that's it.
That reminds me of an article, an interview you did where you said your first day on the job, you just hit with all these acronyms and all this business speak that you didn't know what people were talking about.
I did not. And it was scary. I literally thought, what have I done?
So you said, obviously, you need to get to know the business people. You have to be hired to do that. If you could go back and do something differently, so what would you do before you got in there to kind of prepare yourself for all the business stuff?
I think use the product where you're going. That's a big one. We want everyone at Nextdoor using our product and understanding it, because that's how we can do our best work. I don't know. I think you just have to dive in sometimes. I think, for lawyers, you go to law school for 3 years, you take the bar, you've probably worked at a law firm, you have all these tools in your tool chest. At some point, you're just going to have to open up that toolbox and pull out the hammer, like you don't really know until you get there what you're going to need. But I think you just have to be confident that you have, it's all there. You're going to take all those hard skills that you have and then learn how to apply them in the situation that you're going to be in.
So as we wind down here, talk about scaling, tech leads into the question, what's the legal department of 2030 going to look like? You talk about GCAI, that's going to be a whole different ballgame. What do you think that's going to look like?
So first of all, I still think it's going to include humans.
Yeah.
I know when ChatGPT first came out, all these AI tools, came onto the market. There were all these articles written about how our lawyers going to be obsolete. Like, are they going away? Is AI taking legal job? No, I don't think so. I don't think AI is going to replace us. I think it's going to change us. I think it already has changed us. I think we're all, my team, lawyers were, I think a lot of people were hesitant to use AI. It's a little bit scary. You're thinking about, your job and your the ethics around being a lawyer and how you can possibly use a technology tool kind of to do some of your legal thinking for you. But we've transitioned at Nextdoor in the legal org from, sometimes using AI to now it's always open. There's always like a Gemini or GCI or something open on your screen that you're using. And I think it's allowing everyone to work smarter, quicker, manage more, handle more volume, and spend less money on outside counsel. I mean, we've been able to decrease spend in specific areas because of tools that we now have at our fingertips. So I just think that we will still be here. We will all be proficient in technology, and we will spend more of our time doing this like interaction with other people and exercising judgment, because we won't have to spend as much time doing tasks that bogged us down before.
Do you think that interaction changes anything? Like, do you think that the work you do now, something would be different because you didn't have enough time to interact with whoever was involved or whatever was needed?
I think we'll all be more proficient in more issues, right? Like you can become an expert in something very quickly using tools that are available to you. I mean, before with Westlaw and Lexis, like that was really geared towards law firm lawyers who were writing briefs and like needing to study cases and all of that. Now, I feel like we as lawyers can go into business conversations more prepared with the tools that we have, because we can quickly learn about non-legal things using technology in a way that we couldn't before. Like Googling and searching for something isn't as good as going onto GCAI or going to Gemini or going to an AI tool and like educating yourself on the type of issue that you're walking into.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Because, for a long time I was a litigator at a mid-sized firm, and you'd have to learn like what the litigation was about, if it was,
Yes.
it was just Google. Now that's it. I never thought about that. You could just go to ChatGPT and say, give me a primer on XYZ business or XYZ ID or whatever. Yeah, that's good.
It also helps. I mean, I'll take, we have litigation, obviously, every company does, but I'll take motions that have been written or opinions that have been handed down by the judge and plug them into GCAI and say, hey, well, obviously I could read this, but can you just summarize it for me? And also, can you help me evaluate the strategy? Like, here's what I'm talking about doing with outside counsel. What do you think? Or what are the questions that I should be asking outside counsel? So it also makes me smarter as I interact with my vendors and the people that I hire to help me with legal work so that, I can be more efficient with them and also be more strategic in all the work that I do.
Cool. This has been a good convo, fun convo. Appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on the podcast. If people want to get a hold of you, learn more about Nextdoor, where do you want to send them?
Ping me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to respond.
Okay, that's a wrap for today's episode. As always, we really appreciate you listening. If you want to subscribe, you can find us on most major podcast platforms like Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, etc. Also, if you like us enough, I hope you leave us a favorable review. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, this has been Technically Legal.